Now what you gonna do about that? Not going. I don't give about how you play it. 50 Cent has spent over a decade destroying careers from his phone without breaking a sweat. Nobody has ever made him back down. But when King Harris, T.I.'s 21-year-old son, dragged out secrets tied to the most painful chapter of 50's childhood, the internet watched the untouchable rapper collapse in real time. How the whole beef jumped off. 50 Cent has been running the internet like it owes him money for the better part of a decade. The dude who took 9 shots and lived, who moved crazy units off Get Rich or Die Trying, who flipped a vitamin water investment into a $UND00 million bag, has been using Instagram like a strap, dropping bodies left and right with memes, throwback clips, and captions that hit harder than anything on wax. He cooked Ja Rule so bad the man's career flatlined. He went at Rick Ross for years. He trolled Floyd Mayweather over literacy. He even aired out his own blood, his firstborn Mars on the gram, without blinking. And through all of it, through every single beef he has ever stepped into, not one person on this earth made Curtis Jackson delete a post, take an L, or show even a hint of being shook. That streak held for over 20 years until a young bull from the A named King Harris, barely old enough to legally buy a drink, decided he was tired of watching 50 play with his family and dragged the Queen's rapper into a war that hit so close to home it touched wounds 50 has been carrying since he was 8 years old, back when his mama, Sabrina Jackson, was taken from him in one of the most tragic ways imaginable. The whole situation kicked off because of a conversation that should have stayed between 2 grown men handling business. T.I., the self-proclaimed king of the South, the trap music architect who put Atlanta on his back with joints like Trap Music and King, who survived federal gun charges and came back harder than ever, had been trying to line up a versus battle with 50 for months. And according to Tip, the whole thing was chopped up directly on the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast, where 50 supposedly gave the green light before switching up and acting like he never heard of the idea. T.I. broke the whole thing down, no cap, explaining exactly how the conversation went and how 50 played him in front of the world. I said, take it back there. You like, you want to do? I said, yeah. That conversation, right, there was supposed to be the jump off for something major. 2 heavyweights stepping into the ring, going hit for hit in front of millions. Instead, it turned into the match that lit the fuse on one of the ugliest beefs hip-hop has seen in years. Because what 50 did next had T feeling like he got played on Front Street. Said, well, I'm gonna jump out there first, and then you're just gonna jump out there and we'll line it up. And he said, all right. When Tip went public with the announcement, fully expecting 50 to hold up his end, the Queen's rapper did a whole 180 and curved the entire idea, saying he would never do a Veras with somebody considered a rat. That move was foul on every level. T felt played, straight up disrespected in front of the entire culture by a dude he thought had shaken on a deal behind closed doors. So, Tip slid through Shannon Sharp's club, Shay Podcast in early 2026, and went all the way off calling 50 scary for ducking the smoke and using language that made it crystal clear this was no longer about catalogs or hit records. 50 Cent staying true to the playbook that has kept him relevant for 2 decades did not come back with bars or with words or with any kind of direct address to the accusations being thrown his way. He came back with a picture. He posted a manipulated or straight up unflattering photo of T.I.'s wife, Tama Tiny Harris, on Instagram, slapping a caption on it with the kind of petty, dismissive energy that has become his calling card every time he gets into it with somebody. He did not address the verses. He did not address the snitching talk. He did not even address T directly. He just went after the man's wife, a woman who sang with Escape and built her own name in entertainment, a woman who had absolutely nothing to do with the professional smoke between 2 rappers beefing over a stage show that never even happened. That one post flipped the entire energy of the situation. One reactor broke down exactly why it was such a grimy move and why nobody could really defend it. Yeah, I ain't gonna front though. Like, I understand if his wife would assess some, or if T would assess about his wife or his female, or whatever, and then he responded with that. But like, the whole point was simple and it was damning as hell. 50 had zero provocation from Tiny. She had not said a single word publicly about any of this. She had not posted. She had not commented. She had not inserted herself into the beef in any way, shape, or form. And yet 50 went at her because he knew that targeting a man's wife would sting worse than any punchline he could ever write in a booth. That reactor was far from the only one who felt that way. All across the internet, from IG comment sections to quote tweets on X to YouTube breakdowns with 100,000 views, people were saying the same thing. 50 crossed. A line that even his most ride or die fans had a hard time co-signing. Going after a man's wife, coming at her appearance and her body just to win an argument about a rap battle that never happened. That is the type of move that invites... Because the moment 50 Cent put that picture of Tiny on his page, her son King Harris saw it, and everything that popped off after that proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that 50 had severely miscalculated who he was dealing with, and what a young dude from the A with absolutely nothing to lose is capable of when somebody comes to the woman who raised him. T moved like a vet. He handled his business the way an OG in a rap game is supposed to handle it, through the music. Within 24 hours of 50 posting the Tiny picture, Tip dropped 2 diss tracks aimed square at the Queen's rapper's head. The first one, War, laid the foundation and set the tone. The second, Right One, went straight for the jugular, accusing 50 of being a snitch and putting his most private business on wax for everybody to hear. The bars were surgical and specific, built around accusations that have followed 50 around like a shadow for years. T rapped about 50's personal relationships and past entanglements, using imagery designed to strip the masculinity away from the most famously tough rapper to ever come out of Queens. He called 50 a 5 neurodispatcher and accused him of only stepping to black artists while keeping his mouth shut when white industry executives violated the culture. Every line was crafted to chip away at the armor 50 has spent an entire career building around himself bar by bar, accusation by accusation. But while T.I. was handling things to the traditional hip-hop playbook, going to the studio and dropping disc records like a seasoned general coordinating strikes, King Harris was on a completely different type of timing. On February 24th, 2026, King released his own diss track called Made Man, and it hit different from anything his pops had done. The track was not polished up or radio ready or built for streaming playlists. It was raw, uncut fury from a 21-year-old who felt like his mother had been disrespected on the biggest stage in the world by a grown man who should have known better than to bring somebody's wife into street business. Every bar on that joint revolved around one single unshakable idea. You do not speak on his mother's name and walk away clean. Period. Point blank. No exceptions. But what made the whole thing go nuclear was not just the track or the energy behind it. It was what came after. Because King Harris did not stop at music. He did not follow his father's lead and keep things within the traditional boundaries of how rap beefs are supposed to be conducted. He took to Instagram and launched a full-blown campaign of exposure so aggressive, so deeply personal, so completely without regard for any line that hip-hop culture considers sacred that it pushed 50 Cent into a position he has never been in during his entire career as a public figure. And what King pulled out of the stash, what he dragged into the spotlight for every single person with a phone to see, is what the streets and the internet would eventually call 50's dirtiest secret, the receipts that had the internet going crazy. King Harris did not just drop a diss track and dip. He turned his whole Instagram into a command center, and what he pulled out of the archives cut way deeper than any bar ever could. First, he posted a video of Shaniqua Tompkins, the mother of 50 Cent's oldest son, Mars, where Tompkins alleged that 50 Cent tortured her house back in 2008, putting both her and their son in serious danger. A police report from that era backed up her claims, though no charges ever stuck. But that footage resurfacing right now gave those old allegations brand new legs in front of an audience hearing them for the first time. Then came the paperwork. King put up what he said were records connected to Lode Mac, a deceased associate of 50 Cent, implying that 50 had cooperated with law enforcement and was shook for his own safety during that era. In the hood, in hip-hop, in any circle where street cred means something, the word snitch is a career killer and a legacy destroyer. And King was not being subtle. He was screaming it from the digital rooftops, dropping alleged documents alongside video clips, building a whole prosecution on Instagram like a DA in front of a grand jury. But the most devastating move was still on the way. King posted alleged intimate photos showing 50 Cent holding adult pleasure items, captioning one with a slick reference to 50's classic record, Magic Stick. The play was designed to humiliate on the deepest level, to turn one of the hardest figures in rap history into a meme that would follow him through every comment section for years. Whether those photos were legit was almost beside the point. The damage was done the second King hit post, putting that content in front of millions who had spent 2 decades viewing 50 Cent as untouchable. And the truth is, once 50 crossed the line by going at Tiny, there were no more boundaries left to respect. He opened Pandora's box, and King was running through that door, carrying everything he could get his hands on. And as one reactor put it, the real question was not whether King went too far, but why anybody expected him to hold back in the first place. The reactor was spitting facts that resonated across every corner of the internet. This was not about rap no more. This was not about Verzus or catalogs or who moved more units or who had the bigger bag. This was about family, period. And King was not operating by hip-hop beef rules or internet troll etiquette. He was operating by the code of a young dude from the south side of Atlanta who watched somebody violate his mother on a global stage and decided that a proportional response was not even in the conversation. Then King went completely nuclear in a way that even his strongest supporters had a tough time riding with. He got his hands on what he claimed. That childhood photo was a surgical strike aimed at the most painful chapter of 50 Cent's entire existence. Sabrina Jackson was killed back in 1983, and 50 has talked about that loss openly in his music, in interviews, and in his autobiography, From Pieces to Weight. That trauma is the foundation of everything he built. Every wall he put up, every trust issue he carries with him to this day. By invoking her name, her face, and the way she was taken from him, King was digging into the deepest wound a human being can carry and ripping it open on a public stage in front of the whole world for sport. King followed that up with a second diss track called Sis, and his people described it as even more ruthless than Made Man. During the rollout, King rocked a t-shirt with Sabrina Jackson's face printed on the front, the same photo he had already posted on the gram. The visual was loud, disrespectful, and impossible to look past. He was not just rapping about 50's mother anymore. He was wearing her face like a jersey, like a statement piece, like a declaration that nothing and nobody was sacred in this war. The original rant that kicked the whole firestorm off was caught on camera, and King's words left absolutely zero room for misinterpretation. King was just warming up. The raw fury in his voice made it clear to anybody watching that this was not a performance or a clout play. This was personal on a level that most people never experience. Want to say something about my mama? Your mama dead, as your mama dead, as go dig her up. Go dig her up. Then he turned the intensity up another notch, making sure everybody watching understood exactly where the line had been drawn. Post a picture of your mama. She dead. Pay respect. Stop playing with my mama. Playing like that, going like that. And then King dropped the bar that became the headline on every blog, the soundbite on every reaction video, the trending clip on every platform. How y'all raised? I'm not raised like that. I don't go. I'm not going by my mom. I'm not going. He was not done. King followed that up by telling 50 to go put flowers on his mother's grave instead of posting pictures of other people's mamas, calling his own mother a legend, and making it clear that Sabrina Jackson's memory was not something 50 could use as a shield. He then drew the line that let everybody know the Harris family was not to be compared to anybody 50 had ever beefed with before, saying they operated on a completely different level and played an entirely different ball game. The internet was watching this go down in real time, and the reaction was absolutely insane. 50 Cent, for what might genuinely be the first time in his legendary career of running the internet, started deleting posts. The manipulated photo of Tiny vanished from his page without a word. Other inflammatory content that had been fueling the beef got quietly scrubbed one post at a time. And then came a response that absolutely nobody expected from the man who had spent 20-plus years being the most bulletproof troll in hip-hop history. 50 posted a philosophical quote: "To entertain is to provoke emotions. Love me or hate me, it's cool. Just care enough to feel some kind of way." Followed by what a whole lot of people read as a straight-up white flag. I'm out of here. You guys hurt my feelings. Whether that hurt my feelings line was 50 being sarcastic, playing possum, or genuinely letting his guard down for a split second, became the biggest debate on the internet overnight. But the facts on the ground were undeniable. 50 Cent, the same man who bodied Ja Rule's entire career without breaking a sweat, who trolled Floyd Mayweather for half a decade without flinching once, who disowned his own firstborn son on Instagram without showing a flicker of regret, was backing up from a 21-year-old. The posts were gone. The energy had completely shifted. And King Harris was nowhere close to being finished. "You gonna get me started again, Curtis?" "Just Steph." King fired back immediately, making it abundantly clear that 50's attempt to walk away quietly was not about be honored. Meanwhile, T.I. kept the pressure coming through the music, ultimately putting out 4 diss tracks in total. And T.I.'s other son, Demony, jumped in the mix with a track reportedly called I'm Sorry, M. Jackson, flipping the Outcast into a jab aimed at Sabrina Jackson's memory. The whole Harris family was moving as a coordinated unit, applying pressure from every angle at the same time, and 50 Cent was catching shots from every direction with nobody in his corner stepping up publicly to throw him a lifeline. The uncomfortable truth was just hanging in the air for everybody to sit with. 50 knew how this game worked. He grew up in South Jamaica, Queens. He came up in the trenches. He understood the rules better than almost anybody alive. And the reality was simple. If you are a real one, and you start dissing somebody's mother, you have to expect that somebody's going to fire right back at yours. That is not a theory. That is the code. And 50 of all people should have known that before he ever hit post on that picture of Tiny. 50 threw the first personal shot when he went at Tiny. King threw the last one when he went at Sabrina. And somewhere in between those two moments, the internet collectively decided that it had just witnessed the closest thing to 50C folding under pressure that anybody has ever seen in over 2 decades of watching this man operate at the highest level of internet warfare. The aftermath and the move nobody saw coming. What went down next caught absolutely everybody off guard, from the diehard 50 Cent writers to the Harris family supporters to the people who were just watching the whole mess unfold with their popcorn. King Harris, the very same young dude who had spent days dragging 50 Cent's deceased mother through the dirt on Instagram for the world to see, who rocked Sabrina Jackson's face on a t-shirt like it was a trophy from a battle he had won, who dropped 2 diss tracks and posted content specifically engineered to break down a man 3 decades older than him in front of millions of followers, did something that absolutely no one on either side of this war saw coming. He slid into the DMs of Maris Jackson, 50 Cent's estranged oldest son, with what looked like a genuine attempt to make peace. The screenshot of that direct message popped up on Instagram through the page Arlie for Traps and Trunks around February 27, 2026. In the message, King owned up to the fact that his words had been fueled by pure emotion and that Maris had absolutely zero to do with the beef between their families. He wrote that what he said was out of emotion and ain't have to be said, and suggested they chop it up man-o-man away from the cameras, the blogs, the comment sections, and the millions of eyeballs tracking their every move. The caption on the post asked the followers a question that split the audience clean down the middle. Should these two link up and dead the drama, or should Marky stay completely out his father's business? The comment section went absolutely crazy with well over 1,000 responses, and the divide was as wide as the Grand Canyon. Some people showed King love and maturity, calling it a mature thing to do and a sign that the young bull recognized he had taken things too far. Others were not feeling it at all, warning Maris not to fall for what they straight up called King's bait, and calling out the obvious contradiction of somebody who was just dissing a dead grandmother now trying to extend an olive branch. One comment in particular hit hard, pointing out that just because Maris's issues with his father does not mean he has no love for his grandmother, and that King's disrespect towards Sabrina Jackson was not the kind of thing that gets washed away by a polite DM. But whether King fully understood what he was doing or not, the move was strategically elite. Maris Jackson and 50 Cent have been beefing publicly for years, their father-son relationship falling apart in front of the entire world in one of hip-hop's most painful family breakdowns. 50 has openly discussed cutting his oldest son off over child support drama and loyalty issues. And Maris has clapped back by linking up with 50's ops on more than one occasion. making it painfully obvious that the bad blood between them runs deep enough that it might never be cleaned up. If King could get Mars on his team, even for a moment, the optics would be catastrophic for 50. Having your own blood standing next to people trying to take you down is the kind of blow that no diss track, no meme, no deleted post can ever recover from. It would validate every single thing T.I. had been saying about 50 not being able to hold his own family together, about the tough guy persona being nothing but a front covering up an empty house and broken relationships. But the internet was not ready to let the chaos die, and new players were circling the situation like vultures looking for their shot. Charleston White, the controversial Dallas commentator who has built his entire brand off inserting himself into hip-hop conflicts with zero filter and zero fear of consequences, peeped an opening and jumped straight through it. 50 Cent had laughed at and dropped a comment on a resurfaced video from years back where Charleston had gone at T.I. with reckless energy. And that interaction immediately had people asking whether 50 was actively trying to recruit backup. For a war, he was losing on every front. Charleston White had his own long and ugly history with T, and none of it was friendly. Years earlier, he had publicly challenged both T.I. and Boosie to celebrity boxing matches on camera, branding himself a crime stopper and leaning all the way into his reputation as the one person in the culture willing to say what everybody else was too scared to say out loud. Charleston treated the whole potential matchup like it was nothing personal, just money on the table waiting to be picked up. The thought of 50 Cent and Charleston White linking up to go with the Harris family together was exactly the kind of wild, unpredictable, and that is a question that nobody on the internet wants to sit with, because the answer makes the whole spectacle feel pointless. But then he dropped the one line that put the whole situation in a frame that nobody could argue with or talk around. Those are not your friends. You're a fan. Stay in a fan's place. You like this music? You like this music? That right there's a reality that gets lost every single time a beef like this takes over the timeline for a week straight. People pour their whole emotional energy into going to war for celebrities who do not know their government name and never will, choosing sides in conflicts that will never touch their real life in any way, while the actual people involved deal with consequences that are permanent, personal, and painful. King Harris has to live with the fact that he publicly mocked a woman who was murdered and cannot speak for herself or defend her own name. 50 Cent has to live with the fact that he went at a man's wife just to get a reaction out of a dude he was beefing with over a concert that never happened. T has to live with the knowledge that his wife and his children became collateral damage in a war that he helped set off by going on podcasts and poking a bear that he knew full well was going to bite back. Fan comments across every platform showed a growing exhaustion with the whole spectacle. One person wrote, "Yo, you brothers need to fall back. Keep the moms out the beef alive or gone. Grow up, black men." Another questioned whether Mars should even think about responding to King's DM, pointing out that any dude who is willing to disrespect a dead grandmother on Monday and extend a handshake on Wednesday might not be somebody worth trusting with anything. The question hanging over everything right now is whether this beef has peaked or whether the worst of it is still sitting in the cut waiting to surface when nobody expects it. 50 Cent is known for being calculated, for moving in silence and then striking when his opponents have let their guard down. And the fact that he deleted posts and went quiet might not be a retreat at all. It might be preparation. 50 has the resources and the connections to pull court records to dig into T.I.'s entire legal history, including the federal weapons case and the probation violations, to use his television production empire to turn this beef into content that goes way beyond Instagram posts and deleted memes. T.I. has already dropped 4 diss tracks. King has put out 2. Demani has added his own entry. And the combined output of the Harris family has been relentless and coordinated in a way that nobody has ever brought to 50 Cent's doorstep before. But as Jay-Z once said, and it might be the most important thing anybody could say about this entire war, more important than any diss bar, more important than any leaked photo, more important than any deleted post, any philosophical Instagram caption, or any t-shirt with dead woman's face printed on the front. Nobody wins when the family feuds. And right now, 2 families are out here bleeding on the internet in front of millions of people who will scroll past this and forget about it in a month. And the only ones getting a W out of any of this are the platforms selling ad space around the wreckage of real lives being ripped apart in real time. Well, that's it for this video. But don't go anywhere, because we've got plenty more heat for you. Just tap any of the cards on your screen right now and keep it locked.